Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody.
So Thursday morning, dangerous slot. Many things could transpire between now and uploading, but the North Korea developments certainly worthy of our time.
Yes, but Bill, you're getting out of our format. We normally bullshit for 5 or 10 minutes before we get into the serious nuclear stuff.
I didn't have any parenting foibles to share. I don't have any food tips. I don't have any maple syrup to talk about. Weather's nice. Nothing to talk about there.
Your Washington Capitals won the Stanley Cup.
Oh, yeah. Is that a big deal for you?
Not really, but something. Okay, North Korea. North Korea it is.
So I wrote a piece beforehand saying Democrats should be prepared to defend Trump on North Korea. They don't want nuclear war. They generally support aggressive diplomacy. If it was a Democratic president, they wouldn't be nitpicking that you were making nice with a rogue actor. That's what diplomacy is all about. If they weren't your enemies, you wouldn't need to talk to them. And it would come. Now, I don't know if there's a real electoral risk. I don't think foreign policy agreements tend to be dominant come election day. But if you want there to be the political space to do future diplomatic agreements, you want to nurture a bipartisan consensus around the concept. You don't want a situation where you just knee-jerk oppose everything the other guy does so they can do that to you down the line. You want to be able to say, hey, I support Iran and I support North Korea. Don't be a jerk when I support the next thing. And so here comes Trump, who I wouldn't even call this a deal. It's a deal to have a deal.
Well, the one thing that is unclear to me, because I've heard differing reports. So one thing, there's a promise that the Korean Peninsula has been is being denuclearized. I think we can agree that that's probably premature at best, if not wishful thinking. The one that I'm unsure about, because I've heard conflicting reports, is whether we're going to continue our training and war games in South Korea. What do you know? Is there a definitive answer as to whether or not that was decided?
I hadn't read anything about it this morning. I know there were some mixed messages coming from Pence's office afterwards. And I don't know. I mean, Pence is not the Secretary of Defense, so I don't know what he has to say is even relevant here. I would assume Trump has the final word on that. But I don't know exactly if there is any literal confusion at the Pentagon level. Hey, what's the order?
There's
I don't
confusion
know.
At the pundit level, for me at least. At the pundit level, there's a lot of confusion. But if Trump gave that away, I think that's a problem for me, because look, I mean, we need to do verification. We shouldn't give up anything, including sanctions or training exercises, until we can verify something that they've actually delivered.
Well, I do want to ask you more about this. I want to hear how conservatives are reacting to all this. What's tricky from a Democratic perspective is Trump has handled this in the most slapdash, amateurish, even disturbing. I mean, there's a geopolitical concern that he is, deliberately smashing our deepest alliances with Canada and Europe while trying to recalibrate us to be allied with North Korea and Russia. I mean, so there's a lot of legitimate reasons to be displeased with how this is going, and yet it is still, if a Democrat was doing this, they obviously wouldn't do this in the same fashion as Trump. They wouldn't be lavishing praise on a human rights violator like Trump, like Kim Jong-un. But I mean, Obama wasn't kicking Iran in the teeth while he was trying to do a deal with them, because that's how diplomacy works.
If a Democrat wanted to, negotiate with a murderous dictator without preconditions, Democrats would applaud it. and conservatives would condemn it.
Right.
And so what we have is hypocrisy on both sides. I mean, it doesn't mean that in and of itself doesn't mean that this is the wrong decision, but both sides are, what's the word besides hypocrisy?
Well, I think the Democrats, I wouldn't quite say hypocrites, because I think they're delivering a mixed message right now, because they're not totally unhappy. And they don't want to sound as if they don't want peace with North Korea. But they have to say that at the same time where they're saying, man, this is not how you do a negotiation. You're overeager. You're giving away the store.
Well, in fairness to conservatives, I mean, we're not united either, right? I mean, you've got people like me and Jonah Goldberg and a lot of others who are saying, well, hold on, I'm open-minded that something good might come from this, but there's a lot of ways this could go wrong. And then on the other hand, you have the Trump apologists who the same people who not only would have but did accuse Barack Obama of punishing our allies and rewarding our enemies are now enamored by Trump and are ready to give him a Nobel Peace Prize for that.
So what is happening on the conservative side of the fence? I mean, what Trump is doing is a caricature of what they would accuse Democrats of doing. I mean, I think in reality, Obama famously said in the July 2007 debate that he would meet with the leaders of Iran, North Korea, and Cuba without precondition. He did not do that in practice. There was a much slower track with Cuba and Iran, and he never did anything in earnest with North Korea because they thought they hadn't done enough to warrant that. The process with Iran was very careful. There were lots of baby steps along the way, and the agreement that was achieved did have inspections and verifications. And obviously the thing that conservatives complained the most about was it wasn't a broad enough deal. It didn't cover ballistic missiles. It didn't cover...
Allows Iran to continue to develop, ballistics. It allows them to continue to engage in terrorism and sponsoring terrorism without any penalty. There's a lot of problems with it. I will say this in Barack Obama's defense. I don't think he gave them the PR coup. I mean, I don't remember a video of Obama, like a propaganda video of Obama with Iranian flags and him saluting Iranian general. I mean, I don't remember that part.
I mean, it's a narrow deal. I mean, they basically said, look, we can't resolve all of our issues with you.
Yes.
Let's at least have this inspection regime for 10 years. It still says in the agreement you're not supposed to ever have nuclear weapons, but once you get to the breakout time where they in theory would be reduced after the 10-year window. Right. But in defense of Donald Trump, I think you could make a pretty good argument that North Korea is further along with the free miniaturization, the ability to possibly hit the continental United States, and so you could argue that there's a greater impetus on Donald Trump to have North Korea's leverage is better than Iran's was. I mean, and that's why it was good, in my opinion, for Obama to wait with Iran. I mean, the conservatives are saying, don't talk to these bastards. They don't deserve it. Well, if you just sat there and did nothing, they'd end up where North Korea is right now, have a nuke, and then they would have more leverage.
Possibly. That's possibly true. There's also the possibility that sanctions would have led to an uprising or changes within the regime. It's impossible to know how that would have played out. We'll never know now because we have basically...
You don't know, but now that we have an Iran experience and a North Korea experience... For those conservatives, there's some conservatives who are just Trump loyalists and they don't care about the contradictions. I get that. But there are a number of conservatives, including yourself, who I think are seeing clearly and saying, man, this is exactly everything we say should not be done in a diplomatic exercise.
Yeah.
Can you look at it and say, I still have my problems with Obama, but that was a more professional operation than what we're seeing right now.
Look, I think the Iran deal was a bad deal. In other words, I'm okay with the idea of trying to have a deal. I just think that that they didn't get a good enough deal to warrant, ending the sanctions and actually making I'm okay with trying. But in terms of professionalism, in terms of protocol, in terms of comportment, there is no doubt that not only Barack Obama, but Democrats today are the much more put together, serious party compared to the Republican Party. And the way that Donald Trump, his demeanor, and not just Donald Trump, but so many of the Republicans today, the way they comport themselves, the rhetoric is just, I think offensive. And, that's why, so I would say, like, I've said this before, I mean, like, stylistically, in terms of, like, who do I want babysitting my kids? It would be Barack Obama. I mean, I hope Michelle would be there, honestly, but definitely with Barack Obama. Who do I want to, like, watch my house when I'm out of town? It's Obama. It's not Trump.
So this is the perennial question. What's it going to take for Republicans to break free of Donald Trump? Is what you're seeing, are the people who are criticizing Trump on the right, is it just the usual suspects? Is it just the Bill Kristols and the Jeff Flakes and the Bob Corkers? Or is there a new class of people that are saying, oh, come on, Kim Jong-un, come on?
I love it. You remind me of Larry Miller, the comedian. Come on! He has a great come on.
I was thinking Job in Arrested Development, by the way.
Oh, okay, well, that's a good show, too. At least the original run.
I'm enjoying the new season.
By the way, we should plug something. I wish I knew exactly how to find it, but our friend Bill Butler,
yeah,
was he a full-time co-host of the DMZ?
I don't know if he was ever full-time, but he was in the regular rotation.
Co-host, and a great guy, and just a stand-up guy. And Bill does these amazing projects. He actually he has this map he sells of what's the David Foster Wallace novel that's so
Infinite Jest.
Infinite Jest. So Bill Butler has a map that he sells of all the locations in Boston that take place, and it's like he dropped pins and this. So he did a project on that, but he did a project on the new season of Arrested Development, and anyway, check it out. Bill Butler, great American, great guy, and apparently a big Arrested Development fan. But I digress.
So are there conservatives who are newly critical of Trump over what happened in North Korea, or is it just the same divide that we've always seen, where the NeverTrumpers are clearly in the minority?
No, I think that. Well, okay, so I think the first question is, like, are you talking? Is the universe include Republican voters, or does it include sort of talking head commentators?
I mean, my assumption is that at the voter level, across the ideological spectrum, this is going to be praised. I think the general attitude coming in was, I'm really worried Trump's going to nuke us all, and now, he's not going to nuke us all. The details, whatever. At least we're not getting nuked. That's
today.
Good.
Yeah. And in a way, in a weird way, Donald Trump is benefiting from the expectations he set by the saber rattling, right? So I think he scared the hell out of a lot of people, thinking that, like, a war is imminent. Therefore, that creates a permission structure for him to negotiate with a murderer,
right? And
talk about what a great guy Kim is, and But I would say within the people I'm seeing, whether that's on Twitter or the commentary, I think it's pretty evenly divided within that universe. So half the people are Trump apologists. These are the people that, and I know I'm biased on this question, but I think in this case they're especially intellectually dishonest, because you got the same people. Literally, you can find tweets of them saying, "How is it that Barack Obama, talks to our enemies, is willing to negotiate with dictators, and yet, alienates our allies?" The same people who were criticizing Barack Obama a few years ago are now praising Trump. I actually think that the so-called NeverTrumpers are being pretty fair on this. Like, I don't see a lot of people. There are a couple of people who I think have decided that the way to have a fan base is to just attack Trump all the time, no matter what. And there are people that used to be conservatives who now are basically making a career out of just being reflexively anti-Trump. But by and large, I feel like the sort of mainstream conservative never Trumpers I know are taking a wait and see approach. I think we're saying like, look, maybe we're trying to be cautiously optimistic. Maybe something good will come from this. I'm not diametrically opposed to the idea of meeting with Kim, but I am concerned that I think the big concern, as I've said the whole time, Bill, is that Trump withdraws our troops from South Korea and Kim marches in, and basically takes over the peninsula. That's not an irrational, possibility. And Donald Trump gets to, oh, I got to win. I got this great deal. He gets to get praise.
Well, the thing that's wild about all this is,
remember the other day he said, if this thing blows up, if this falls up, if nothing good comes of this, I probably won't admit it. I'll probably, have an excuse. But that's very telling. That's what he would do.
Right.
And there is also, and I'll shut up, just the PR coup that this is for Kim, right? Now, going back to, I criticized Obama for Iran and who knows what was going on internally there. Well, who knows what was going on internally in North Korea? We don't know. We don't know what kind of pressure might have been on the regime. We do know that people who live there, who defect to South Korea, are riddled with,
parasites.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. With parasites and they're malnourished and yada yada yada. We don't know what might have happened had we continued our regime.
Well, I mean, they've been malnourished for decades, and the regime is still there. So I would not think that the collapse was imminent.
Why is he ready to come to the table now? Is there pressure?
Because he has a nuke.
Well, but
he has a nuke.
Last point: why would he give up a nuke that he spent 30 or 40?
I don't think he is.
There's no rationale for it. Okay, I'll shut up.
He achieved the ultimate leverage by having a nuclear weapon, and he has a president who has telegraphed for years that he wants to pull out military of South Korea regardless of a nuclear deal. He wanted to unilaterally pull out in February. But I've been talking to Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un is never going to have this good an American partner ever.
Right.
At the peak of his own leverage. And at the same time, the South Korean government wants America to get out too.
That's what I don't get. That is what I don't understand. Why is that?
Well, because they have a leftist government in South Korea now. The more conservative president got impeached and ousted beforehand, and they have a belief that they want peace with North Korea and get on a path.
Why? What does that give them? I mean, what do they get out of it?
They have a country divided for 60 years. That's not fun. You have relatives on the other side of the border you can't see.
If we pull out, are you suggesting that if we pull out, the country will no longer be divided? That the peninsula will
puts them on a path towards that? Sure. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, but I mean, you tear down the wall in Germany, you are on a path to reunification. That's the step beforehand.
So here's where I think the utopianism comes into play. There was a theory that if we opened up China, if we did, permanent normalized trade with China, that they would get a taste of capitalism and our Beatles music and our blue jeans, and all of a sudden they'd become little Democrats and freedom would spring. And instead, that has not happened in China. Mm-hmm. Is there an assumption that the North Korean regime would somehow, I think this is like when you have a bad influence. It's much more likely that you have two kids, that the bad influence is going to rub off on the good kid than that the good influence is going to rub off on the bad kid.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Korea expert. I don't think anyone can really know exactly how.
I did not write my thesis on Korea in this case.
I mean, how did East Germany and West Germany reunify? Well, the Soviet Union collapsed. That made things go a lot easier. Which side of the wall was going to be dominant in the government?
If the Kim regime fell from an internal coup, and then we opened up, the DMZ or whatever, we that would be different. I mean, you would have a refugee crisis to deal with, just like you had in other places, but at least you wouldn't have. I don't you think it's more likely that the North Koreans take over the South if we pull out? I mean, is that just me?
Well, the South Korean economy and political system is pretty robust and solid. I don't think they would just roll over and be dominated by essentially a band of thugs. I don't think it'd be that simple. But these are the complicated questions that go into any kind of reunification conversation. How would you actually reconcile two diametrically opposite governments and diametrically opposite economies? So it wouldn't. I don't think it could happen overnight, and I don't think. Maybe Trump wouldn't care if North Korea steamrolled in, but a lot of other countries would. And,
right.
I mean, you might have thought that we would care if Saddam Hussein steamrolled in Kuwait, but guess what? A lot of people did. So I
would say this: there's a chance. I don't know, 10. I don't know what the percentage is, but there is a chance that this all works out, and that Donald Trump, it's almost like the Inspector Clouseau or Inspector Gadget kind of bumbles into something, but there is a chance that Donald Trump does all the things that anybody who knows what the hell they're talking about, who knows history, would say do not do this, and that it miraculously turns out and works.
Well, and that's why I think Democrats have to be very careful not just to be knee-jerk naysayers here. There are different strands of foreign policy in the Democratic Party. Some are more interventionists on humanitarian grounds, and some are more isolationist on pacifist grounds. But I do think there is a common thread that aggressive diplomacy is always good. You would never go to war without exhausting every possible diplomatic avenue, and you don't have to get all that uptight about checking off every last precondition, because then you're never going to get to the table, and you want to get to the table, at least hear each other out. There are certainly arguments for having some preconditions, some trust building steps you take before the big summit. I don't think any Democratic president, we know Obama did not do what Trump did. Obama did not think that North Korea was as far along as Iran in terms of what was possible to warrant that kind of meeting. And Obama never even had a summit with Iran. John Kerry negotiated with their foreign emissary. But I do think that Democrats still believe, in general, diplomacy is good. Talking is always good. And so even if Trump does it in an amateurish way, if they get a deal that all parties agree to, it's one thing to say, I'm nervous about pulling militarily, I'm nervous about removing an umbrella of protection for South Korea. But if South Korea is okay with it, we're in no business to complain.
Well, Donald Trump has this weird, no knowledge of history. He lacks the, I think, conservative worldview. The other day he talked about how Crimea, they belong to Russia anyway, or they wanted to go back. They're all, it's like basically the Sudetenland all over it.
But Ukraine does care. Ukraine is unhappy.
Yeah.
What happened? The Crimeans love it. Well, based on what?
Believe me. Right. He doesn't I don't think he appreciates the historical parallels, or the long-standing conservative worldview regarding these things. And also, there is zero regard for, as you mentioned, human rights. That is not even on his radar. Reagan, part of our strategy in fighting the Cold War was there was a moral warfare taking place, and whether it's Reagan meeting with Soviet dissidents, how do you say Solzhenitsyn? Whereas, Reagan meeting with dissidents or supporting freedom fighters. There was not only a military component to this, but a moral component to this of sort of standing in favor of human rights. And that's totally absent of Trump. So when he goes and says that Kim is a great guy, when he salutes, now it's hard. I guess if someone salutes you, there's a reflex to salute them back. Okay, I get that. But saluting a North Korean general, and then simultaneously attacking the American media and Canada, it's more a lack of moral. It's moral relativism, I guess. It's a lack of concern for symbolism and human rights.
I'm gonna defend Trump ever so slightly here.
No,
look, I mean, this is a difficult question for liberals in general, because from a liberal perspective, you believe in peace and you believe in human rights. If you are working on a peace agreement with a human rights violator, and you say, I'm not going to do an agreement with you until you solve your human rights problems, you're not going to get a peace agreement, and you might end up in a war. So balancing those two goals is always very complicated.
But meeting someone like that, if you are the president of the United States, and this is a 10-horn dictator, and you are on a level playing field with them, and you've got our American flag next to that North Korean flag, and you're shaking hands and laughing and smiling with this guy, isn't that a PR coup for North Korea? Isn't this elevating him to an equal status with the commander-in-chief?
Oh, look, Trump's not a liberal. I believe Trump's foreign policy, I don't believe he is without principle. His principle is that I don't care about human rights. I think that is a genuine principle of his. The reason why he is in line with Putin and more in line every day with Kim Jong-un is they do not want an international order where human rights are part of the mix. They want a situation where human rights are not part of the mix and they can act on their nationalistic impulses with impunity. I believe that is a belief of Donald Trump's. And therefore,
how far is this from like Kissingerian realpolitik? Like, isn't this a return to kind of the?
I mean, I think Kissinger had more of an interest in global stability. I mean, not to say I think Kissinger's some sort of wonderful person, but clearly he was not a super human rights guy. But I think his realpolitik was in, maintaining, but one, giving us an edge in the Cold War, but by maintaining an overall global stability. For Trump, I don't think he cares about global anything. He goes, I want to do what I want. Putin should get to do what he wants. Kim Jong-un wants to do what he wants. And let's not have any namby-pamby, wussy human rights skulls getting in our way.
Yeah.
Whereas with Democrats, and you saw this with Carter and Iran, and Obama with also with Iran and with Egypt and with Syria, there's a tension in those goals between peace and human rights that they struggle with, and they get dinged. Oh, you didn't take human rights seriously over here, but you said you did over here. You're a big hypocrite. No, it's just these are complicated problems where there are inherent tensions. Trump has no tensions, so that's why it's complicated for Democrats. You don't want to give Trump carte blanche and say it's wonderful that you are making peace and who cares about North Korean human rights. That's not great. At the same time, you would want to pursue North Korean peace if the opportunity presented itself if you were in the same position.
Yeah, I guess there's a danger that Trump could ironically discredit the liberal, policy of how to negotiating with anybody.
It's more likely the opposite. I think it's going to discredit the conservative notion that you shouldn't talk to rogue actors, because I think he's going to get some kind of deal. Yeah. And again, it may be a deal where Kim Jong-un doesn't really give up very much and still maintains nuclear capability.
That's very likely, yeah.
But if it doesn't involve nuclear war, if it doesn't involve nuclear proliferation, if the South Koreans are cool with it, people are going to say that's a good deal at the end of the day.
It is so ridiculous that, like, yeah, we're not going to get destroyed by a nuclear bomb is when. Like a year ago, we didn't even think they could. Anyway,
I mean that is the problem with them actually getting, once they have the nuke, they hold a huge card to play. Which is again, I know you're not thrilled with the Iran deal. That was the impetus.
We don't negotiate. I'm not going to be intimidated by them. It's like if they want to do that, we will turn that thing into a parking lot. We will pound them. I don't think we need to be pussyfooting around with these.
So you would have bombed Iran before doing the deal Obama did?
I think that the mistake was made by Bill Clinton. I think that if there was a time to deal with Iran and North Korea,
he should have bombed them both, is what you're saying.
I didn't say that, but I'm open. Bill, I'm open to it. I'm open to the possibility.
If you believe that bombing either one of them would have been very bad, it would have caused a lot of deaths and global instability, you could understand why Obama would say, if I can at least slow Iran down for a long period of time.
Our stated policy, not mine, the stated policy of the United States was, these regimes will not go nuclear. It cannot happen, and it will not happen. We will not allow that to happen. If that is ostensibly your policy, what are you going to do about it? What did we do about it? 3 or 4 presidents watched as they did it. They did it. And now we have these horrible people who, have the potential to wipe out an American city or worse.
Well,
that's what happened.
It was not smart for any president, Republican or Democrat, and they both did it, to say this will not happen while knowing you were not going to bomb them. I guess Clinton people did consider it. I think the Clinton people actually did have a conversation. Should we bomb these guys? So maybe it's not fair to say they never considered it.
Well, look,
but obviously deep down they knew
there are ways to. Israel took out some stuff in Syria. We've done stuff with a Stuxnet or whatever.
They did. Obama did do Stuxnet.
My point is, I'm not saying the only option that we had. I don't know what our options might have been.
Look, Israel did take out Syrian reactors, but Israel also took out Iraq facilities that then went underground.
Right.
So it's not like bombing a facility is a panacea. There are other. It's not perfect.
All right. I'm going to talk about something more superficial and weird, but something you may only get in the DMZ.
All right.
I think there's an interesting generational and stylistic thing happening. So Obama and Trudeau and Macron are all sort of youngish, good-looking metrosexuals.
Okay.
They've got like the styled clothes. They look good. And they're like Gen X kind of, I don't know, hipster. I don't know what the word would be, right?
Right.
But Trump and the people Trump likes are like a generation older, and they're kind of like the old school. I don't know.
Are you saying Kim Jong-un isn't a Gen X metrosexual hipster?
Take him out of the picture. You can't classify that guy. But I'm saying Putin and Rudy, not to compare the two.
Duarte.
Well, let's stay here domestically, or throw Putin in too. But anyway, am I onto something? I think that these like two things. One, I think Trump has an aversion to these kind of like young metrosexual type guys, and he sees them as weak. And I don't know. I think there's a weird stylistic and generational thing here that has not been fully. I haven't even fully sort of understood what it is, but it seems to be a trend.
Well, Trump is a nationalist with authoritarian tendencies. No, he's not Hitler. There are checks and balances. He's not acting with impunity. But I think he has authoritarian tendencies, and he clearly shows a affinity for other authoritarian figures. That's
right. But that's not what I'm talking about, Bill. That is ground that has been well trod. This is well-done steaks with ketchup and wearing red neckties that are too damn long.
But the people you're talking about, Macron, Obama, Trudeau, these are cosmopolitan figures.
Yes.
Who are interested in internationalism, in humanitarianism, in global cooperation, and they're not fundamentally authoritarian, and so he's got no truck with that.
Does having a cosmopolitan political worldview inform the way you cut your hair, the way you dress, the way you carry yourself? I think it does. And also, is there these old? So to me, this reminds me of like, I don't know. Think of like, if you ever seen the TV show that '70s show?
Yeah.
And you've got that guy Red. Red is like the dad.
Right.
It's like seen it all, cynical, old. World War II generation. Right. That's kind of the Trump people.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I don't know. There's something weird there. I should do my dissertation on it.
Well, the image that Macron and Trudeau and Obama portray is, men of the world, men of the future. and Trump is a proud throwback, and as is Putin, for that matter. I mean, if Kim Jong Un, I think, is trying to play a different game, where he's trying to sort of indicate that maybe he is more of a cosmopolitan figure than you might not have thought. But again, the authoritarianism is the common thread there.
I mean, I wonder how much of this is playing to the constituencies too. You know, if you're young, if you live in a city, not only are you more likely to share the cosmopolitan values, but remember, I was talking about how I would trust Obama more. I might want to have a beer with him more than Trump or whatever. Like, maybe there's something to this. Anyway, it's silly and superficial.
Well, but in that vein, you had a column in the Daily Beast where you are unhappy that your party, your Virginia Republican Party, has nominated Corey Stewart, a neo-Confederate, for the Senate race against Tim Kaine. I don't think he's going to win, because Tim Kaine's not considered in any kind of trouble, and Virginia has trended pretty blue in recent years. But there are several competitive House races where Republican incumbents are considered vulnerable, and so there's the immediate concern that Stewart's going to hurt the down ballot ticket,
right?
Or turnout
like Barbara Comstock being one of the most prominent, thoughtful conservatives who is always in a close, reelect. Right.
And then there's the broader question: what does this say about the party overall? That and I think you even tweeted out, Selena Zito said, let's not say all Republicans like Corey Stewart, but then Trump comes in and praises Corey Stewart for winning the party, winning the nomination, and Mark Sanford's personal life aside, a more principled conservative who's been critical on Trump on things like budgetary matters and trade. Trump comes out against him, and he loses his primary in South Carolina. So that's spawning a lot of commentary about how this is fully Trump's party now, and that doesn't sit well with you.
No, I mean, it's hard to get away from that fact. And part of this column I wrote, I sort of thought back, like, what was the conservative movement like when I first came to D.C. So you have to remember, I am from a different sort of background. I've always been conservative, but like I was playing in rock bands and I went to a really liberal school, and like I would have never joined the college Republicans. I just viewed it as, well, the stereotypical thing. And when I first came to DC, honestly, one of the things that blew me away the most was how cool the young conservatives were down here. I mean, they were like normal, like, I hate to go back to the superficial stuff, but they were more like Macron and Trudeau than Trump. And I was really sort of surprised by that. And they weren't, they were diverse. They were into music and sports, and I've seen in the past 20 years that change, right? So there were always these kind of gadflies who were, we sort of laughed at them. And now those people, those gadflies, have actually taken over the Republican Party. The weirdos, the paranoid people, the paranoid conspiracy sort have really, I think when Trump won, it was almost like a Revenge of the Nerds thing. And then I think you have people like Corey Stewart, who has been around for a while, and he's always been a hardcore conservative, but I don't think he really was in the fever swamps until recently. In the past like 5 years or so, he's really kind of embraced, the Confederate flag and all that stuff, and Paul Nealon, and some very unseemly figures. And part of the reason for that is that there's an incentive structure in the party and in the movement that is actually, incentivizing bad behavior. And so now we're at a point where a party that 2 years ago nominated Ed Gillespie, who, despite the fact that he had to maybe do some things in that election that he might not be proud of today, was a pretty mainstream conservative, had worked in the Bush administration, son of immigrants, to now the point of nominating this guy who has posed with the Confederate flag fairly recently.
Although there wasn't a dominant figure like a Gillespie to go up against Stewart, who had a real network of supporters to work with.
And Corey Stewart is from Minnesota, by the way. So it's not like it's not like it's 20 years ago and he's from Georgia and he's proud of, his heritage or something. This is a guy who's like from Minnesota and now is posing with the Confederate flag. It's weird. That's where the party's at today. I mean, look, I don't think, I don't think it's time. I don't think we need to abandon the party of Lincoln, the party of Reagan. And I feel like, in that movie Office Space where the guy's named Michael Bolton and his friends are like, why don't you just go by Mike? My name. He's the one who sucks. I don't think we necessarily need to abandon conservatism because of these people, but we'll see how it plays out.
Now, there's been a lot of talk that this is
conservatism. I mean the label,
right?
The conservative label.
There's a lot of talk because of Sanford, because of Stewart, that this is fully Trump's party. More evidence that the Flakes and the Corkers are in Nowheresville. But at the same time, yesterday, the Senate Republicans are in the process of passing a defense bill that's with a provision that's going to scuttle Trump's deal with China on ZTE. And there's plenty of examples where Republicans salute Trump and don't may complain about Trump but still vote for his stuff. Here's a case where it's a pretty major deal with a major power that the Senate is now scuttling. I don't think it negates the point that Trump has a big hold on the party, but it is a contrary data point that it's not 100% total. There are parts where people in the party say, look, I'm not going to go along with just anything. Yeah.
Look, I think it's, I've really been, one of the themes of my writing has been, what is the best way for conservatives to act in the Trump era, right? And is it nobler to stand up against him and be defeated, just like he defeated 16 Republicans in a primary, just like Bob Corker got run out of the Senate, just like Jeff Flake got run out of the Senate, just like Mark Sanford got pushed out, to actually stand up as a Republican politician, which is much different than being what I am as a commentator. Is it nobler to do that, or is it nobler to actually keep your seat, stay elected, and have some guardrails, try to keep him? And I think it's an open question, but if we use Jeff Flake as a cautionary tale, is conservatism better off because of what Jeff Flake did? I don't think so. We could end up with Kelly Ward in the Senate or a Democrat. And I think also Jeff Flake sent a message to a lot of people, which is don't stand up to Trump. And so, what about, and we think about the way that people like Ben Sasse and Marco Rubio have started handling Trump. They've started handling him where, like, we're going to attack him on tariffs if we think he's wrong there. We're going to attack him on ZTE if we think he's wrong there. But we're not going to basically attack him as the resistance. Now, the other thing that I'm curious about is the base, the base loves Trump, and the polling shows this. Part of the problem, though, is that the Republican Party's actually shrunk because of Trump. So the numbers are skewed in terms of what percentage of Republicans like him versus what percentage of Republicans liked Bush or Reagan early on. So that is an asterisk. But how much of this is unique to Trump versus just he's the president, right? So if you had gone up against Bush in 2002, now, again, the caveat is 9/11, but if you were a Republican who had gone up against Bush in 2002, what would the base have done? They would have probably ousted you. By 2006, then you have a chance, right? So maybe we should go with like the FDR model, right? Remember FDR, and this is a weird analogy, but he knew that America had grown isolationist. So he knew he had to bring us along before America could enter World War II. maybe the best model is, we know that Trump is bad, but we know that the public, or at least our base, isn't there yet. Rather than being stupid and committing suicide and trying to stand up to him today, doing what the left wants you to do, and if you don't do, they'll call you a sellout and an unpatriotic. Maybe the best move for these Republican politicians is to bide their time. I think it's an open question. Bill, what do you think?
Well, I'm a pragmatist at heart, and I would agree that in many, many circumstances, blunt confrontation doesn't get you very far. You tend not to be able to persuade anybody to your side, and if you're already in the minority of your situation, it's not going to get you into the majority. And so, I mean, if I was
think of it this way: if someone came to me and said, or say I went to a friend and I said, "Hey, man, I hate to tell you this, but your wife's cheating on you," what outcome is going to happen? Now, like, let's say I'm right; she is cheating on my friend. It's still going to ruin my friendship. My friend is not going to, a year later, be like, "Hey, man, you turned out to be totally right. And you're my best friend. You're the only one who was honest enough with me." No. A year later, you may be proven right, and your friend may divorce her, but your relationship is over. You're a reminder to that friend that you were taken advantage of, that you were misled. It's going to ruin that relationship. That's basically these Republican politicians who go to their voters and say, Donald Trump is a horrible person. That's basically what they're doing.
I mean, I think that if your plan is to smooth out the rough edges, put the guardrails on, try to hold what ground you can. Say Trump's giving us a lot of conservative things that we like. We don't think he's conservative on trade. Let's hold the line there. You will probably get more short-term wins than through the flake or corker model with just the blunt confrontation. But if your concern is that Trump is fundamentally corrosive to the long-term prospects of the Republican Party and to conservatism itself, you're aiding and abetting that corrosion by playing along at all. Now, right. and having said that much, you can confront and still lose. I mean, your confrontation might just be the last gasp of true Reaganite conservatism in the modern Trump populist Republican Party.
Look, that Trump has put us in this very thankless, almost untenable situation, right? Because the choice basically it's just a horrible choice. I mean, on one hand, if you sort of play along and try to get the best you can get and keep him from going off the rails, in some sense you are aiding and abetting this horrible person, and you are lending him a certain credibility, sort of like Trump meeting with Kim in a weird way. You are helping normalize him, right? On the other hand, what good has Jeff Flake done? None.
Well, there's no short-term good that he has done.
Yeah.
He has further proven that model of conservatism is not what is popular in the Republican Party today. But there's still the question of what is the right long game here. Obviously, Reaganite conservatism has lost the short game, but I think those folks have to decide: is there a place for me in a party that is primarily nativist populist?
Yeah.
And if there is, I'll do my best to work with these folks and get what I can get. Or is this a true threat to the fabric of our democracy, and I'm going to fight it to the bitter end, even if that means if I can't win it inside the party, then I have to leave the party.
Yeah.
And if I leave the party, if those folks left the party, they would kill the party.
Yes.
You need Flakes and Corkers. I mean, Trump just barely won the presidency. He loses any piece of that coalition, it is dead.
Destroy the village.
They have
destroy the village in order to save it.
If you think the problem is that dire, they have that card to play.
Well, couldn't they also? I mean, I'm not an expert on parliamentary procedure, but you could. I mean, an individual senator has a lot of power to grind everything to a halt. And especially when you have a very slim majority in the Republican, coalition, like, couldn't, instead of complaining and calling Trump a cult, couldn't Corker just be like, look, we're not passing any of Mitch McConnell's judicial nominees out of this committee until I get this.
Well, I mean, both Corker and Flake have their occasional barbs, but have not used what power they have to really prevent Trump from consolidating power, on the grounds that we're going to do this case by case. And look, there is a logic to that. Although the exception of Corker saying, I'm against this budget bill and now I'm going to vote for it, that just makes no sense at all.
I've been on the record saying I don't know what Corker believes in. Corker actually helped normalize Trump, helped Trump win. One day he stands up and acts like a noble hero. The next day he folds. I don't even. Right. My hope is that if there's any justice, that Corker does not get any sort of credit for standing athwart Trumpism, because he doesn't deserve it.
I mean, if Corker wanted to, and you could argue maybe he's done enough here to show his leaning toward Phil Bredesen for Senate, the Democrat, versus the right-wing firebrand Blackburn. But he could come around and endorse Bredesen and say, look, we need people like Bredesen to hold the center. We got the country over party. As if my party's going to go off the rails like this, then I'm out.
But I mean, I don't even know how bad Marcia is. I mean, isn't she more like a Ted Cruz type than a Donald Trump type? I don't know.
I mean, all things being equal, probably. But in the era of Trump, she's going to be a loyal foot soldier to Trump.
Yeah, I have to look more into it to see how I feel about her. But anyway, this has become a very depressing conversation. This is what happens when we don't start with talk about maple syrup.
What are you gonna do for Father's Day?
We're just gonna have a little cookout, little barbecue. I think the wife's gonna make some ribs. So
you're gonna do your own barbecue.
Yeah, we're gonna have a little barbecue here to celebrate me. But I will say, this is actually a great time for some shameless self promotion, since it's Father's Day. On my Patreon page, Bill, where people who support this, not this, but my podcast, Matt Lewis and the News, via Patreon, I have a little audio sort of little podcast coming out where my kids, for the first time ever, make their debut on air talking about what a great father I am for Father's Day.
Is this a hostage video? They have to read a script?
No, my kids they're starved for they have especially my older boy has the celebrity gene, so he likes to sort of ham it up for the camera and the microphone. So but kids do say, as Art Linkletter said, kids say the damnedest things. So it's kind of a fun little 5-minute mini podcast I did with them. First time ever. You can check it out at patreon.com/Matt Lewis. And it's coming out this weekend. So
very exciting.
Yeah. How about you? What you doing for Father's Day?
I haven't totally decided. I will probably get some barbecue. There are about 5 barbecue places in my area that I haven't tried yet. Most of which are relatively new. So I'm trying to decide: do I want to go take a flyer on a new barbecue place?
Massachusetts barbecue.
You'd be surprised, sir. You would be surprised.
Almost as good as Brooklyn barbecue.
There are some legit places up here. This is a semi-rural area. People know how to smoke.
You know what I think you should do? Is what you do for your birthday. You should do that on Father's Day too.
Well, no, I don't do the a la carte for Father's Day. For people who haven't or just tuning in, for my birthday, I always have a la carte birthday. I do a list of like 4 or 5 things that I want to do instead of having a party. And I just tell my friends, these are the things I am doing. Join me or don't join me. But
I love this idea. Did you invent this?
That is my invention. That is what I've left the world.
Game-changing, paradigm-shifting idea. Bill will basically say, at 7:05, I will arrive at the Dunkin' Donuts in Northampton. I'll be there till 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, I'm going to play putt-putt golf until noon. Then I'm going for barbecue. And you know, you basically, you've taken control of this.
I've changed the game. It's true. But I do want to make one pitch for you think New England barbecue is terrible. This is not my go-to because it's in Vermont. But Exit 4 in Vermont, Putney, Vermont, Curtis Barbecue. Curtis is an old guy. I believe he was a Southern sharecropper many years ago. Emigrated north, and he now does his own barbecue in a dilapidated school bus on the side of the road.
Sounds delicious.
Good chicken and ribs. So that's the real deal. So if you're driving up I-91, pull off Exit 4 in Vermont. If you don't believe there's real barbecue in New England,
but he's not a New Englander.
I don't believe he's New Englander by birth.
You have to import your barbecue.
I mean, he's planted his roots. He's now a Vermont icon. But I'm deciding on some barbecue. I'm deciding if I want to drag my kids to a presidential site. I can get to the Coolidge Homestead in Vermont, which we have been to already. I've not been to FDR's Hyde Park. I've not been to Martin Van Buren's place in Kinderhook, New York. I've not been to the Adams site. I've not been to the John Quincy Adams stuff on the eastern part of the state.
That's where OK comes from, right? Old Kinderhook.
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Is that right, or is that apocryphal?
I read the Van Buren book. I feel like was in there. I didn't double check that. So do I drag the kids there because it's my day, or do I do something that's more kid friendly so my day is not miserable? I haven't weighed that yet. Yeah. That's why Father's Day is different than birthday, because the kids have to be involved all the way through, and if they're miserable, I'm miserable.
Good point. Yeah. So being selfish is actually giving them what they want. The most selfish thing you could do is let them watch TV all day, at least short term.
Well, I do that every weekend morning as it is.
Long term, that's a bad idea. All right,
I cut them off by 11, by the way, just so you know I'm not the worst.
Yes. Well, we've all, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory, my friend. My kids may or may not have been watching TV when I got up this morning. And the wife had already left.
I do not do weekday morning TV.
Well, I did not grant permission for this, but they got the remotes. Anyway, always a delight, Bill Scher.
I hope I saved this from ending on a down note.
This is better.
Okay.
I feel happier now. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Follow us on Twitter at DMZ Show.
And check out, I should have a fresh podcast coming up for New Books in Politics. Thomas Reston, author of Soul of a Democrat, a great tour of the great Democratic presidents and what their historical import is to the modern Democratic Party. So check that out at newbooksnetwork.com. I think that's it for me as far as self-promotion is concerned.
Well, I'm not one to talk about myself or self-promote, so we'll leave it there. But we might have to reconsider this DMZ show, the name of this show.
You've always been a little squirrely about it.
Well, I'm just saying, what happens if the North Korea thing works out? We could be hardest hit by that.
I still feel like we are a demilitarized zone regardless of what happens on the global stage.
Fair point. All right. Thanks, Bill.
Take care.
You guys.